You are about to make a decision. It might be small, what to eat, whether to keep watching, whether to put the phone down. Or it might be something larger, a choice you have been putting off, a direction you have been considering, a moment that feels genuinely open, genuinely up to you in a way that makes the future feel unwritten. That feeling, the feeling that you are the author of what comes next, is one of the most fundamental experiences of being human. It is so basic, so constant, so woven into every moment of conscious life that most people have never once seriously questioned whether it is real. It may not be real. In 1983, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet ran an experiment that has been disturbing people ever since. He asked participants to flex their wrists whenever they felt like it. No instruction about timing, just whenever the urge arose. While they did this, he measured two things simultaneously: the electrical activity in their brain using an EEG, and the moment they reported becoming consciously aware of the intention to move, tracked using a clock they watched during the experiment. What he found has never been fully explained away. The brain showed electrical activity, a signal now called the readiness potential, building up in the motor cortex an average of 550 milliseconds before the movement happened. This alone was expected. The brain prepares movement before movement occurs. What was not expected was what the participants reported about their conscious intention. They reported becoming aware of the urge to move an average of 200 milliseconds before the movement, but 350 milliseconds after the readiness potential had already begun building in their brain. The decision, at the neural level, had already been made before the person was consciously aware of making it. The feeling of choosing, the subjective experience of an intention arising, was not the beginning of the causal sequence. It was somewhere in the middle, or possibly at the end. Something in the brain decided. Then, a third of a second later, consciousness became aware of the decision and experienced it as its own. Libet himself was troubled by this. He was not a determinist and did not want his findings to be read as proof that free will was an illusion. He spent years arguing for a modified version of free will based on what he called the veto, the idea that even if the initiation of an action begins unconsciously, conscious awareness still has the power to cancel it. You may not be the one who starts the movement, but you are the one who can stop it. The conscious self, in Libet's framework, is not the author of action. It is the editor. It cannot create, but it can refuse. This is a more modest form of agency than most people are comfortable with, but it is the most that Libet believed the data would support. Other researchers have been less generous. Neuroscientist Sam Harris has argued that the Libet experiment, combined with everything else neuroscience has established about the relationship between brain states and mental states, make the traditional concept of free will incoherent. Not just limited or constrained, incoherent. The idea requires that there be a self that stands apart from the physical processes of the brain and directs them. But no such self has been found. Every thought, every feeling, every intention, every sense of deliberation that you experience arises from neural processes that you did not choose and cannot directly observe. You did not choose your genes. You did not choose the environment that shaped your developing brain. You did not choose the experiences that formed your values, your instincts, your ways of responding to the world. The self that is supposed to be making free choices is itself a product of causes that stretch back before it existed. The philosopher Dennett disagrees, not with the neuroscience, but with the interpretation. He argues that the kind of free will worth wanting is not the kind that requires a ghost in the machine, standing outside the causal order and directing it. The kind of free will worth wanting is the kind that distinguishes between actions that flow from your own values, reasoning, and deliberation, and actions that are coerced, compelled, or the product of neurological dysfunction. A person who thinks carefully about a decision and acts on their considered judgment is exercising free will in the only sense that matters for moral responsibility, social life, and human dignity, regardless of whether a neuroscientist could in principle have predicted the outcome from brain scans taken beforehand. Dennett calls this compatibilism, the view that free will and determinism are not in conflict because they are answering different questions. Determinism is a claim about the physical causation of events. Free will is a claim about the kind of causation involved, whether the action flows from the agent's own reasoning and values or from something external to them. Both can be true simultaneously without contradiction. This is philosophically sophisticated and genuinely compelling, and it doesn't fully dissolve the discomfort that the Libet experiment produces. Because even in the compatibilist framework, the reasoning and values that constitute the self, the very things that make an action yours rather than someone else's, are themselves the products of causes you did not choose. The deliberation is real. The deliberation is also determined. The fact that the determination runs through you rather than around you may be enough for moral responsibility. It does not obviously restore the sense of authorship that most people mean when they say they have free will. More recent neuroscience has complicated the Libet picture in ways that cut both directions. Some researchers have found that the readiness potential Libet measured may not be a decision at all. It may represent a background level of neural noise that the brain uses to generate spontaneous actions, rather than a specific preparatory signal for a specific choice. Other researchers have used more sophisticated imaging to show that specific neural patterns in certain brain regions can predict which hand a person will use to press a button up to 10 seconds before they are aware of any intention. A finding that, if replicates reliably, extends the gap between neural causation and conscious awareness far beyond what Libet found. The debate isn't settled. The neuroscience isn't clean. The philosophy isn't resolved. What is clear is that the experience of free will, the felt sense of being the author of your own actions, of facing genuine alternatives, of being the uncaused cause of what you do, does not map neatly onto what the science shows is happening in the brain when decisions are made. There's a gap. The gap may be bridgeable in the ways the compatibilists argue, or it may not be. What does it mean to live well with this uncertainty? The psychologist Roy Baumeister has studied what happens to people when they are experimentally induced to disbelieve in free will, when they read arguments for hard determinism before being given opportunities to behave ethically or unethically. The results are consistent and concerning. People who have been primed to disbelieve in free will cheat more. They help others less. They perform worse on tasks requiring self-regulation. The belief in free will, regardless of whether it is metaphysically accurate, appears to be functionally necessary for the kind of self-regulation and moral behavior that human social life depends on. This is the deepest problem the free will debate creates, not the philosophical one, the practical one. The belief may be a necessary fiction. Dismantling it may cost more than it reveals. The feeling that you are the author of your actions, even if that feeling is a slight late arrival to a process already underway, is the thing that makes you a person rather than a mechanism. The story you tell yourself about your own agency may be the thing that produces the agency. Which means the question is not simply whether free will is real. The question is what happens to a mind that stops believing it is. Benjamin Libet died in 2007, still arguing that consciousness retained a meaningful role in human action through the veto. He did not want his experiment to be the thing that told people they were not responsible for what they did. He understood that the distance between a neuroscientific finding and a livable philosophy of human life is not always crossable in a straight line. You are about to make a decision. Something in your brain may have already made it. The awareness of making it will arrive a third of a second later and feel like the beginning. Whether that feeling is a lie or the only truth that matters is a question the science has opened and has not yet closed.